always a fun story to tell. So yes, I was on my way to a lunch meeting, and I was going past a grocery store, and this bag went across my windscreen.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a wonderful book. It is called Fantastic Florence, Her Adventures Begin, and it's written by a terrific author. Her name is Lesley Millard Zafran. It is a heartfelt and imaginative children's book with a powerful message. Inspired by a flying supermarket bag, Florence comes to life as a caring character who helps children navigate both fun adventures and the emotional challenges life can bring. This story is more than just a whimsical journey. It's a comforting companion for children dealing with real-life trauma and confusion. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Books to Life Marketing for helping us put her on TV today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Lesley, thank you so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure, Logan.
Great to have you on the show. This is such an imaginative book, but I understand it was inspired by a real life situation, a flying bag actually coming across your windshield when you were driving or something. Tell us about how it all began.
Thank you. It's always a fun story to tell. So yes, I was on my way to a lunch meeting, and I was going past a grocery store, and this bag went across my windscreen. And it reminded me of when we would go to the grocery shop when I was with my children and they were younger, and they would sometimes give children balloons, and the balloons they'd sometimes let go. And before they would be able to cry, I would say, "Oh, where do you think your balloons have gone on holiday? Where do you think they're off to?" And they'd immediately start thinking about that. And so when the bag went across, I thought, a story about a bag who decides to leave her store and go out into the world. So I was writing it as I was driving. When I got to the parking lot, I was doing my notes. I couldn't wait to get home to start really finishing it off and putting it all together, I should say.
I think that's great. I love the fact that you were able to diffuse the situation with your kids when they lost their balloons by asking them, what kind of fantastical adventure is the balloon taking? I thought that was very, very smart. I wish I knew that when I was a younger parent. That was great. And I love the fact that you took this, what could be an ordinary experience, and turned it into an extraordinary story. Tell us, how does Fantastic Florence blend adventure with emotional support for children?
So to go back a little bit more, when I wrote this first story, it was a story about change. It's a story about, because Florence doesn't really want to leave the store. She's actually quite afraid to, and it takes her a long time to build up the bravery. She goes home with a family, learns to love them, has an adventure where she almost blows away and they are determined to get her back. But I really wasn't thinking about taking it any further, although people who read the book said, "Oh, this is a series." But timing is everything. And about 6 months before I wrote this book, I made a wonderful friend, Dr. Cinda Kane, who's one of the women that I collaborate with. She's an educator and at university level. And when she read the book, she said, "I have an idea." And literally 3 days before COVID lockdown, I went to her house and met her closest friend, Tara Kellogg, who is a very renowned therapist in Florida, both dealing with families and trauma. And she said to me, "I've been looking for a way to reach children who are going through difficult times. There aren't enough tools for us as therapists and people who are trying to help, but I think you may have found a way. Would you be willing to write a children's series dealing with these kinds of topics?" And I said, in another life, I wanted to be a child psychiatrist. So, yes, let me try writing one book and see if this is what fits what you had in mind. And I decided to write a book on bullying because I was bullied when I was a child. And I gave her the book, and she said, "That's it." And so that began Florence's journey from thinking about herself and her own adventures to deciding that she wanted to help children and their adventures in growing up. That's how that
Gotcha.
happened. So
So
it's
Fantastic Florence is now part of a series?
There are six books so far. The sixth one was just published a week ago. I'm very excited about it. It's a bit different.
Mhm.
And each one has Florence in it, helping the children, but a different topic,
Gotcha.
so that children can find the ones they need. Hopefully, no child needs all of them, although
Yeah.
some of them are more just fun than they don't have to be so difficult, but there are some difficult topics.
Gotcha. So bullying is one of those topics. What are some of the other topics that you cover?
So I cover the topic of abandonment.
Mhm.
Um, Two little boys who find out at a sleepover that their dads both left, and
Mm.
they think it's their fault. One of the things that Tara has taught me is that children often, or maybe even usually, think it's their fault when something goes wrong. And so the tagline for many of the Florence books is, "It's not your fault,"
Mm.
because we need to help children understand that parents have difficulties that have nothing to do with them. So these little boys find out they're not alone. And then there's another book on neglect, which was the toughest one I've written so far. A brother and a sister whose parents don't come home. There's no food. They end up having to go stay with their grandparents. But I need to hasten to explain to anyone who's watching, Florence is, the books are very friendly and warm and comforting, even though we're talking about difficult topics. They're never scary. They're never scary in the way of a child will think that things are worse because they've read it. Because Florence has a way of being very positive, even as she is willing to call what's going on by its real name.
Right. So you handle it very sensitively, where the child doesn't get a gloomy vision of his or her world. Instead,
No.
they feel empowered by Florence and her optimistic outlook.
Exactly. And this is one of the things that I'm, again, very grateful to Tara for, because since I have someone who is a trauma therapist specialist, I can say, is this the right language? Would this be the best way to handle it? So that the books are comforting to read, even though they're covering difficult topics. And that's really important because I want children should be able to um, I think children are given many opportunities by these books. And the last thing that I would ever do is want to write books that make them want to close the book and not go any further.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is this your first foray into writing when it became the Florence series, or tell me a little bit about your writing background?
I started writing when I was a little girl. I wrote poetry, I wrote stories. Um, I also worked in publishing for a long time, so I did a lot of editing. And words have always been a passion of mine. Um, and I've dabbled in a few things, but nothing like Florence. Florence is my passion.
Yeah.
She is such an extraordinary character, and I feel children can just benefit so much from her and have fun at the same time, which is a great combination.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. What age group is the best, is this book best suited for?
So I read a lot in schools, and so it's a thing I think about a lot. They had asked me to read in kindergartens. I've done that. They're a bit young. I really think second grade is probably depending on the child, maybe first, but second through fifth or sixth, maybe. Um, one of the things Tara again mentioned, and that I know Cinda agreed with as an educator, is that sometimes when children have been traumatized by something, their cognitive skills can be a little bit slower to develop. So that might mean that an 11 or 12-year-old might read a book that you might think of for 9 or 10-year-olds, but it's perfect for them. It fits exactly what they need. So I hesitate to make too strong a number, but I definitely think in terms of starting age, probably 7 is about the right age, maybe 6.
It's a great book for a parent to read to their child so they can be empathetic to others who are less fortunate, who might be in similar circumstances as the characters that Florence meets, and provoke good conversations, I think, between parent and child as well. I'd imagine that was one of your goals, right?
Yes, so because children, when they're experiencing something difficult, are frightened sometimes to talk about it, one of the things the books can do, and this is great for parents or caregivers to know, is the child doesn't have to talk about themselves. They can talk about the character in the book and what's happening to them until they feel safe enough to use the word I instead of the name of the character. And so the healing, even if it doesn't go quite as strongly until they say I, it's already beginning when they can even talk about it. When a parent or someone will say, how did you feel when you saw a child being treated this way or when you heard this? It's a gentle way to help children to get ready and then they take their own time with it.
You had the opportunity to read this book to any children or share this book with any children. Tell us
Lots.
about that experience.
I've done it both in small classrooms of, I don't know, 12 children. I've done it in auditoriums of a couple hundred. And I always go round after the stories with a microphone asking questions to find out what they think. Um, what did they think about the story? I'll ask questions, for example, with the bullying book. What do you think that word bullying means? What do you think about that? Because it's such a great opportunity for children and then later on in class to talk about these things. And sometimes I'll ask, what other adventures would you like her to have, Florence to have? Um, so I try to, in smaller classes, I try to encourage children to talk. Do any of them write? Do any of them like to write, to draw illustrations? Because I just think books generally are so precious, and I want children to have that chance to talk about them in whatever way works for them, just to make sure we all keep reading books.
Absolutely. Speaking of an activity other than reading, have you envisioned this as a series of videos, perhaps? Because obviously that's a great way to reach children as well.
Yes, we actually put quite a few TikTok, very short story, very, very short uh, snippets of all kinds of stories. And my dream, really, I want this to be an animated series. It's so visual. I mean, everything about Florence is so great, and I see it as something that would be fun for children, and that when parents again could watched it, or even if they're with their other friends, it's also got conversation that can go beyond it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll open up a great dialogue between parent and child or caregiver and child for sure.
Thank
Talk to
you.
us a little bit about the illustrations in the book,
So
in the books.
the illustrations are tricky because I basically I don't do the illustrations, of course.
Right.
They're done by the publisher, but my job is to make sure that every detail that I'm trying to convey in terms of style, emotion, placement, expression, all those things. So yes, and I'm happy to say that the illustrations are really great and children love looking at them.
Wonderful, wonderful. They are great. They do really reinforce the message within the pages of the book, which of course is the goal. What message do you hope both children and adults take away from the series?
I think that Florence is an opportunity to be a source to validate what children think and feel. Um, Sometimes parents are so caught up in their own lives. And I remember this myself as a mother of younger children. We're caught up with our work and the house and the finances. And then children come home and they've got their own things going on. And sometimes it's difficult to focus on them. So F- Florence reminds parents, if they're reading, or children when they're reading on their own, that it's okay to have that everyone has these kinds of feelings. Everyone feels frightened sometimes, feels angry, feels depressed. These are all things we go through as human beings. And I want children to feel that Florence not only says that is something that can happen, but she doesn't leave it there. She's always about this is what you can do. She's very proactive. She wants to help children find a way to not feel that way, to find a way to feel more comfortable with themselves. So yes, so
That's
that's
wonderful. How
thank
do you
you.
envision educators and therapists perhaps using this series of books to help children maybe open up about their own experiences, their own lives?
Well, you mentioned something before that was interesting, which honestly I didn't think of at first, and you brought it up, and it was something I'd been told a few months ago. I thought at first that the only people who, for example, want to have their children read the book on neglect or abandonment would be the children who'd experienced that. But then I do a lot of work in schools in another capacity. So I talk a lot to teachers. And what I was hearing was, no, it's great for children to learn compassion by hearing that Jennifer has this going on and Sam has this going on, and that things aren't necessarily as straightforward, as easy as they seem, because it promotes that idea of empathy in children. So I see it as a way to help children understand each other, maybe a bit more compassionate, um, and recognize they're not the only ones. I also want to have sympathy for the children who are struggling. I do want to write a book, although I haven't yet, about the children who are the ones doing the bullying. I feel it's really important to talk about why does that happen? No child just decides out of the blue, oh, I want to go and bully someone. It's because something's going on with them. And so I think it's really important that we also pay attention to the children who are sometimes not being their best and try to help find out why and help them find out why. So this isn't obviously a substitution for therapy if that's needed, but it can still open doors.
I think that's the important part is that it opens up a dialogue. You know, a child might recognize that maybe little Billy's coming to school unkempt or has bad hygiene because he's neglected at home, not because he's pigpen or whatever mean name a child might say. And they might learn that, you know, Mary is harsh on other children because her parents are harsh on her. Because, like you said, bullying promotes bullying, and most kids who bully are bullied, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
or it's their only way of trying to have some control because in their lives outside of school, perhaps they have none, and it's their
Right.
one way of feeling they have some agency.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm simplifying it, but that's definitely another
No,
thing.
it's very, very true. How do you approach writing about complex feelings in a way children can understand without overwhelming them, as you mentioned before?
Well, for better, for worse, my own childhood comes in handy
Mhm.
because I struggled as a child. It was not easy for me. And although I certainly I didn't have to deal with abandonment or neglect in the ways that I write about, um, I know the feelings of what it's like to not feel you fit in, to be bullied, to feel alone, to feel not good enough. And so it's actually, I think, probably very therapeutic for me now that I think about it, because I can have the chance to pull that out and put it on paper and think, what can I do so that other children don't have to feel that way?
I know today we have, you know, no bullying rules in schools and things like that. But growing up when you and I did, I mean, some kids were running home from school because they were getting bullied that much. I mean,
Well, I hope it
times have
wasn't
changed.
you.
What's that?
I hope that wasn't you.
On occasion. I mean, I wasn't bullying the kids. I'd be the kid running home. I
No,
think,
that's what I meant.
yeah, yeah. I think every child of our generation and thereabouts went through tough times. I imagine it's just more cloaked today. It's more covered up today
Um,
because we do have bully-free zones at school and anti-bullying rules and so forth. But it's hard to imagine on some level these kids are not getting bullied because kids can be quite mean when they're young.
well, Logan, I have to tell you that bullying has become much worse.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, all the deterrents are not working, and the social media where you can be anonymous has
Right.
made it even more scary.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that these my books were basically written, some of them anyway, were written during COVID. And now when I speak to teachers, the children are actually far less equipped because of the time they lost at school.
Mm.
So when they go into school, already socialization can be difficult, but now they're struggling. And I'm sorry to say that the statistics really are that bullying is worse. So
I
we
believe
have
it,
to do something.
and particularly like you said, with the social media now, it's a magnifying glass. They're going to humiliate you or insult you. They can do it on social media, which is like broadcasting it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book that I've just published, which came out a week ago, is a little similar, but from a different point of view. I'm writing about a boy and a girl who, for completely different reasons, think nobody likes them. They're not being bullied, but they think they don't fit in, they don't have a place, no one wants to be their friend. And I think, honestly, I know a lot of grown-ups who don't always feel being themselves is good enough. But children, are definitely just sort of learning. And I decided in this book to do it a little differently because I thought it's not good if Florence is always the one making everything happen. I want the children to start having some agency. And so in this book, for the first time, Haruto and Maggie learn together about what they really could be doing so that they could fit in more. It's really important to me that children have agency of their own, not just depend on Florence, wonderful as she is.
What is it about Florence? What are her defining traits that make her a good role model for kids?
Florence understands somehow through wisdom that I have no idea how she acquired that children's lives go up and down, that they have lots of things happening to them all the time, and they're just learning how to handle them. But she learned this because she has two extraordinary magical powers. She has the power to hear children's thoughts, not grown-ups' thoughts. That's very important, only children's. And when she concentrates very hard, she can write on herself as if she were a piece of paper on the front of herself. And she sends children messages to help them. So she's never talking to the children. It's very important. I keep her as non-human as I can, although the books always show illustrations that show her emotions. It's very clever by the way the bag creases. I can make her happy, sad, worried, angry. And the messages that she writes are written in the books for the children to read. So she has this way of being able to hear what's going on. She knows their true feelings because she's not just listening to what they say out loud. She's able to hear their innermost thoughts. And that gives her the ability to talk about those, not just about what's on the surface.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's great. Um, People can find out more about your books on Amazon. Do you have a website?
The
Why don't you tell us some more
website's
about that?
in sort of preparation, so
Okay.
nothing to really look at right now, but Amazon has all six of the books. Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What advice would you give to other writers who want to create books for children that have emotional depth like yours?
Talk about something that is meaningful and passionate for you.
Hmm.
I think that's for me, that's the beginning of an end of everything. And I think most writers would say that. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
interviewed many, and that they
Yeah.
all say write about something you love, that you care about, that you know about.
Exactly. Or want to learn more about. I mean, I think
Oh,
it's a way to
yes.
spread your wings as well. So now, do you have the writing bug? I know you've got 6 books out there for Florence. You're going to stay within the Florence motif, or are you thinking about writing some other books as well? Tell us what's going on up there as you think about your writing career going forward.
Thank you. Well, there's lots to do with Florence, but I want Florence to do some things that she hasn't done yet. I want her ability to show children about the world to change a little. So I'd love her to go to England or to France and to meet children who are different. I want her to start spreading her wings and have the chance to show children other parts of the world and things that go on. I want her to have the occasion to 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 explore things that are not scary topics like the neglect and but also things like confidence and making the most of who you are. I want the books to always have that chance for positivity. And we started with the difficult topics because it was important to make sure that those involved who really wanted to help children would have those as tools. But Florence is too happy to just do those kinds of books. So whether it's hopefully as part of the animation, the books together, because she can appeal to any demographic because she's not human, it really does give me the opportunity to take her anywhere. So it's very exciting.
And she's also transcultural also. She's not particularly American or British or whatever
Exactly.
it might be. She can go anywhere
Exactly.
and teach children about different cultures, different languages, different customs. So the sky is the limit for Florence. And I think that's a great thing. And I think the sky is the limit for
Thank you.
you as well. We have been talking about a fantastic series of books. It is called Fantastic Florence. It's a reminder that strength and love can come in unexpected forms, even a simple grocery bag with a big heart. Thank you so much for being our guest here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much, Logan.
My pleasure. I appreciate your insight and your wisdom and your great heart. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford for the Spotlight Network, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.